Hello everyone, welcome back to Believer Science Academy Bengaluru. This is daily news analysis. In today, that is 29th July 2025, we'll be discussing a very important articles that are important from UPSC prelims, mains and interview perspective. So, the first article is from the Hindu text and context, which discusses about urban floods. The article reads, India has the highest number of slum clusters in flood prone areas. Slum clusters in flood prone areas. So this the very title itself suggests the gravity of the situation in India. So flood risk and informal settlements. A new study which was published in Nature Cities reveals that India has the world's largest number of slum dwellers in flood prone areas with over 158 million people primarily in the Ganga Delta. In the global south, 445 million people live in flood exposed informal settlements across 67,568 clusters. Slum dwellers are 32% more likely to live in floodplains than outside them due to affordability and accessibility. So this data becomes very important for your mains preparation. Students who are writing mains this year, you can use this data. 445 million in the global south and 32% are more likely to live in the floodplains than outside them due to the reason is very important, affordability and accessibility. Out of 445 million people in the global south, 158 million people live in India itself. Next, global and regional hotspots. India stands at the top, followed by Indonesia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Rwanda, northern Morocco, and coastal Brazil. Shows a high concentration of vulnerable floodplain settlements. All the nations mentioned here, they belong to global south. Global south countries. Okay, meaning the developing or underdeveloped countries. In India, 40% of slum dwellers are in urban and suburban zones, often settling in flood prone areas due to proximity to jobs and low cost housing. This is also very important. The housings present in the floodplain area are majorly due to their proximity to jobs, which is closer to the jobs, and also they are more lower cost compared to the areas which are far well. Next, why floodplains? Why do people live in floodplains? In the global south, flood zones are less desirable for formal developers, making them available for low income group. Okay, the formal developers, they do not consider the floodplains to be suitable areas for making apartments, for making housing buildings, etc. So they go to areas which is stable in nature and they go there and build. As a result, the floodplains remain vacant, which is filled by lower half of the society, that is the lower income groups. In contrast, in high income countries, floodplains are often desirable due to subsidized insurance and protective infrastructure, which reduce vulnerability, which is often lacking in the global south countries. That is, the subsidized insurance or protective infrastructure is not present in like Indian or global south countries. As a result, this is filled by low income groups, which results in the formation of slums. Real estate development often pushes vulnerable groups into higher risk areas. Lower risk areas will be taken up by the real estate development, especially the formal developers, wherever, and the areas with the lesser higher risk is filled by low income groups such as slum. Next, the settlement patterns. Informal settlements are often constructed using tin sheets, tarps or tents and are linked to land contractors. Very important. Like you might have seen in like Mumbai or even slums in Bangalore. You might have seen those. The cities, so not the cities, the slums which have been developed there are mainly based up of tin sheets, tarps, etc. They cannot be called as a formal house as well. They are just pukka house. They are just kacha houses. So which are made up of tents. Next, in cities like Bengaluru and Mumbai, informal housing often emerges in areas unattractive to formal builders exacerbating flood vulnerability. Next, the socio-economic factors that result in slumming of floodplain areas is this vulnerability is shaped by income level, education level, lack of insurance, and inadequate infrastructure. All these, or the combination of all these factors, leads to floodplains being filled by slums. Slum dwellers suffer direct and indirect flood impacts such as job loss, disrupted access to essential services. Whenever there is an urban flood, you might have seen the images where like the slums which have been filled by complete water. As a result, they are not able to access to their jobs. They are not able to get access to essential services as well. According to like sustainable development goals, there is the 2030 sustainable development deadline is around the corner. The findings tie into urgency of achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. That is SDG 1 no poverty, SDG 6 clean water and sanitation, SDG 11 sustainable cities and communities, and SDG 13 is climate actions. All these needs to be met needs to be met in order to address the slum dwellers issues with respect to floodplains. Okay, if we are able to address the slums which are developed in floodplain areas, you may be able to achieve these goals. Researchers stress the need for a human-centric and community collaborative approach to risk mitigation. So next is there is a need of data and innovation. The policy should be driven by data and the policy should be implemented through innovation. That is, the study is a proof of concept for AI and machine learning tools that analyze satellite images to identify flood exposed populations. So there was a use of AI and machine learning which used satellite data. Plans are in place to study slum expansion, climate change and mitigation trends for predictive modeling. Okay, if we can understand how the slum expands and how the climate change is impacting these slums and what are the mitigation trends that are happening around the world, we can bring a predictive modeling to the future. That is what the AI helps in. With the given data from the machine, given data from the big data or satellite or any sort of data, AI can bring certain predictive modeling. Okay, next. There is another article from the Hindu which was very important, which talks about the medical boundaries of Ayush practitioners. The context is there was a recent debate on Twitter, that is a debate on formerly Twitter between a hepatologist and a chess grandmaster ignited renewed scrutiny of whether Ayush, that is Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha and homeopathy practitioners can legally and ethically call themselves doctors and practice modern medicine. So this grandmaster was Vidyut and he posted some post on the Twitter that his family is practicing Ayush. He said happy doctor's day to them. And another person who is a doctor who commented to this post saying that your parents or your family is not doctors, they are just Ayush practitioners. So don't call them as doctors. So there was an issue. So this is what happens in Twitter. But as a result, now there is a question whether Ayush practitioners are really doctors or should they be called by different names. That is what this article discusses. The controversy has deep legal, ethical and public health implications. Historical and legal background. From Bohr Committee to Ayush legislation. The Bohr Committee of 1946 supported evidence-based modern medicine and dismissed traditional systems. Bohr Committee dismissed traditional systems. In response, the Indigenous System of Medicine Committee used a Hindu nationalist narrative tying Ayurveda to Vedas and India's cultural identity. So there is action and a reaction happening here. Next, the legal recognition came with the Indian Medicine Central Council Act of 1970, later replaced by National Commission for Indian System of Medicine Act of 2020. In the Board committee, they completely dismissed traditional systems, that is Ayush, and then there was a committee constituted by the government of India, not the government of India, but the nationalist narrative, that is Indigenous System of Medicine Committee, and later there was a law, and that law was changed into National Commission of Indian Systems of Medicine Act of 2020. So this is the legal background at the moment. And the curriculum, there is a contradictory curriculum happening here. The Ayurvedic medical education mixes spiritual philosophical concepts such as dosha, prakriti, and atma with anatomy and physiology from the modern medicine. Okay, so in Ayurveda, like according to Charaka Samhita, they talks about certain doshas which can be healed by prakriti and the importance of atma as well. They combine this with the anatomy and physiology of the homeopathy or modern sciences. And then these systems are epistemologically incompatible, raising questions about the feasibility of integrative medicine. He says that they are incompatible, they are against each other, that Atma, Prakriti is not incompatible with anatomy and etc. of modern science. So the other argues that it raises questions about the feasibility of this integrative medicine, that is a mix of Ayurveda and modern science. Next, the legal disputes over the practice scope. Can Ayush practitioner prescribe modern medicine? The Rule 2 subclause EE of the Drugs and Cosmetics Rules of 1945 permits states to recognize non-MBBS practitioners as registered medical practitioners, that is RMPs, under Drugs and Cosmetic Rules of 1945. Then several state governments use this clause to permit Ayush practitioners to prescribe modern drugs like antibiotics. So under this law, who is responsible for providing the right? It is the individual states, not the center. Okay. Next, however, the Supreme Court in Mukhtiar Chand versus State of Punjab ruled that Ayush practitioners cannot prescribe allopathic medicine unless specifically qualified. So this is the legal and this is the judicial interpretation. So at the moment, Ayush practitioners cannot prescribe allopathic medicine if and unless they are specifically trained for this. Procedure and practice creep. That is, the 2020 central notification allows Ayush postgraduates to perform 58 minor surgeries. This includes procedures such as gallbladder removal, raising serious safety and legal concerns. This is where the issue comes. Giving medicine at the level to a level or to an extent is okay, but doing surgeries which is going to have larger repercussions is going to be a cause of concern. The constitutionality of this notification is under the judicial review. Important, 2020 central notification, it allowed Ayush postgraduates to perform 58 minor surgeries. This is where the issue here is. Prescribing the medicines is okay, but conducting surgery is altogether a different issue. Public health risks and ethical concerns. Scientific incompatibility. That is, Ayush principles such as three dosha theory are fundamentally incompatible with the germ theory and evidence-based medicine. Patients are often misled believing they are receiving modern care from MBBS qualified doctors. However, they are not MBBS qualified doctors. Ayush in public healthcare and insurance. The government is considering including Ayush treatments under the Ayushman Bharat, that is India's national insurance scheme. 20,000 crore of taxpayers' money has been spent on Ayush research councils, which have yielded limited scientific outputs. So you can see the author of this article is not in favor of Ayush. Against ideology versus evidence. The role of politics and Hindu pride. The author argues that the Hindutva narrative often champions ancient Indian scientists or sciences, including exaggerated claims. That is, Kauravas as test tube babies. Not our words, this is the words of the author here. This ideological push is not exclusive to BJP. Even the Congress supports Ayush in its 2024 manifesto. Policy decisions are appear ideologically driven rather than scientifically grounded. So this editorial, you can clearly say, is against Ayush. But that is the opinion of the author here. I just want to discuss about the legal and ethical implications of this Ayush practitioner. So at the moment, though they are allowed to do surgeries, it is under the judicial review. Though they were allowed to do or prescribe allopathic medicine, the Supreme Court in the case has stuck on this. So now that is the legal status of Ayush practitioners. Next, there is an article, a very interesting article, which talked about why Tablighi Jamaat members were given a clean sheet. Delhi High Court verdict on in July 2024. The Delhi High Court acquitted all the 70 accused members of Tablighi Jamaat. The court held that no legal violation was committed by them regarding the lockdown and COVID-19 restrictions. This case was named Muhammad Anwar versus State of NCT Delhi. You might have, okay, we'll discuss here only. We should learn what happened in the beginning. In March 2020, when the world or India was going through COVID-19 and the COVID-19 lockdown is happening, the quarantines were prescribed, everyone was locked inside the home. During that time, the Tablighi Jamaat event, that is Jod, took place from March 12 to 15, 2020 at the Nizamuddin Markaraz in New Delhi. At that time, COVID-19 was not yet declared a national emergency by Indian authorities. Only 81 cases were reported in India initially around March 13. The Delhi government's order limiting religious gatherings to 50 people came into effect after March 15. So the event took from March 12 to 15. So this doesn't apply to the Tablighi Jamaat event. Lockdown began only on March 24, by which time most Indian attendees had left. Foreign participants, however, remained waiting for international flights to be resumed. So you might have remembered this became a very big issue during that time. The Tablighi Jamaat, which has a gathering of important Muslim, like Muslim scholars or the Muslim followers, etc., etc. So many of them come together for a meeting, for a gathering. This gathering happened during the period of COVID-19, and when they came out, most of them were tested positive for COVID-19, and many people thought that they are intentionally spreading the COVID-19. That was the sentiment back then. So that is why there was a case put on them, and now this is the timeline which is being explained here. So the event happened even before the lockdown was announced, so they are not responsible. That is the verdict of the court. So the key legal findings of the court is there was no violation of Section 144 or the lockdown. That is, there was no official gazette notification properly disseminated about Section 144 at the time of gathering. The attendees were already inside the venue even before the restrictions began. After lockdown started, leaving the premises would have been illegal, so staying indoors was the correct action. No proof of COVID-19 spread or malaise. The charge sheet did not mention that Jamaat members were COVID positive. There was no evidence of anyone violating quarantine or intentionally spreading the virus. The court said there is no whisper in the charge sheets that they defied any legal order knowingly. So this was the allegation that was made about Tablighism during the COVID-19, that they were intentionally spreading the virus. But the court said there is no such thing in the charge sheet. Next, role of the media in misinformation. Media sensationalism and in Islamophobia. A section of media outlets falsely portrayed the Tablighi Jamaat as the cause of COVID-19 spread in India. There were calls for Corona Jihad, Corona terrorism, or Islamic insurrection were irresponsibly used in the news headlines and debates. And even there are many posters which showcased the skull cap of Muslims as a way of spreading Corona. Fake news and videos. Fabricated videos were circulated claiming that Jamaat members were spitting on food, deliberately infecting others. These were widely debunked later, but by then public sentiment had already been damaged. So this is one of the misuses of social media, we can say. So how fake videos are circulated to create hatred among the community. Next is the official discrimination. That is, Even the Delhi government medical bulletins listed Tablighi cases separately, reinforcing the narrative of the blame. So, this is where even the officials made a mistake. Though the public can easily be influenced by the social media, can be easily be influenced by like fake videos and all, it is the duty of these officials to verify them first before blaming the victims here. But that was not the case. Here they blamed the victims, they started listing the cases separately. So this was the issue, but now according to the recent judgment of the Delhi High Court, they are not responsible for it, and both legally and both ethically they were not to be blamed here. So there was no malicious intent, and the event happened even before the official lockdown began in India. So this is what the case is about. Next, about POSH Act 2013, and specifically the Internal Complaints Committee, which is under POSH Act of 2013. Why is it in news? Recently, there is a very gruesome news, that is, a student in Odisha died by suicide after a sexual harassment complaint was rejected by her college's ICC, highlighting urgent reforms needed in grievance redressal systems. So the girl in Odisha went to the college saying that she was being harassed by one of her faculty, one of the teacher, but the school or the college was not ready to accept her complaint. She then went to complain to police and all. It was not able to they were also not accepting the complaint. Even the internal complaint committee, they also didn't accept the complaint. So as a result, as a last resort, she decided to commit suicide by putting herself on fire in front of everyone in the college. So this became a large or a huge issue. So that is why we are discussing this issue about internal complaints committee and its legal basis. It is constituted under Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace or the Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act, which is famously known as POSH Act. Mandatory for organizations with 10 or more employees. Purpose obviously is to prevent and to redress sexual harassment and ensure a safe, dignified workplace for women. The composition of ICC: the presiding officer is a senior woman employee, 2 internal members with a legal and social work background, 1 external member from NGO or expert on sexual harassment. Minimum 50% members must be women. See the irony here. The presiding officer is a senior woman employee, and in this case, she rejected a plea from another victim who belonged to female itself. So this is the area where the irony data sad depth here. Okay, women becoming the villains of women here. Powers and functions. One is complaint window within the 3 months of the incident. Incident here is any harassment happened at workplace. Conciliation on request or formal inquiry. Then quasi-judicial powers are like civil court can summon, record sworn statements and gather evidence. Inquiry timeline must complete in 90 days, and confidentiality is legally mandatory. They should maintain the confidentiality of the victim and the all the issues or information related to victims. Post inquiry, it recommended disciplinary action or case disclosure. Employer must act within 60 days and help file a FIR if criminal complaint is sought. That is about ICC. Now we'll discuss about POSH Act of 2013. So its origin is based in a judgment of Supreme Court, that is Vishaka guidelines from the Supreme Court, which Supreme Court decided to use its power under Article 142, which it gave directives under this. According to Article 45 or 142, the Supreme Court has the power to bring complete justice to a particular case. So in this aspect, Supreme Court brought a directive, and now it is the responsibility of the President to enforce this under an order until and unless a parliamentary law is made by this. So initially the presidential order was enforced from 1997 itself, and later a law was made, that is POSH Act in 2013 after the Nirbhaya incident. Next, it was influenced by Banwari Devi case and Nirbhaya incident. Constitutional and legal global backing. It upholds gender equality, which is mandated in the Article 15 of Indian Constitution. India is signatory to CEDAW 1979, ratified in 1993. It talks about like domestic violence or all the sexual harassment against women. It is a convention which talks about violence against women. Key provisions, that is, it defines workplace. There is a wide workplace definition. It includes public or private sector, informal work, NGOs, and domestic help as well. Sexual harassment definition, that sexual harassment is defined as well, that is physical contact, unwelcome advances, sexually colored remarks, display of pornography, verbal or non-verbal misconduct. All these come under sexual harassment. Next is local committees for establishments with less than 10 employees or domestic workers at district level. The employer's duties here is should conduct post training and awareness campaign, display post policy clearly in the workplace, set up internal complaints committee as per the law, and it also mandates certain penalties. That is, fine up to 50,000 for non-compliance. Repeat violations may lead to license cancellation or deregistration of the business. So it is very stringent because the actions or the assault is so grave. Next, few prelims pointer. Nisar satellite launch article. There is an article with respect to Nisar launch vehicle in the Hindu news. So it talks about Nisar satellite launch. That is the Nisar ISRO synthetic aperture radar. That is Nisar. Sorry, NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar or the Nisar satellite is scheduled for launch at 5:40 p.m. on Wednesday from Satish Dhawan Space Center, Sriharikota. The satellite has been mounted on GSLV F-16, that is geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle, and all systems have been checked by ISRO. So it is good to go. It will be launched on 5:40 p.m. on Wednesday or tomorrow. Satellite specifications and orbit details. It weighs 2,392 kg. Orbit will be placed in 743 km sun synchronous orbit, which is ideal for consistent Earth observation. Liftoff site is second launch pad in Sriharikota. The dual frequency synthetic aperture radar. It talks about Nisar is the first satellite to operate using dual frequency SAR, that is synthetic aperture radar. Which are the dual frequency? One is L band SAR from NASA and other is S band SAR from ISRO. So both NASA and ISRO are colliding together, combining together, not colliding. So both radar systems will utilize NASA's 12-meter unfurable mesh reflector antenna mounted on ISRO's modified 13K bus. Okay, so this is about NISA and the mission capabilities and applications. It majorly focuses on global Earth monitoring, that is all weather, all day and night coverage with 242 kilometers satellite swath width and 12-day revisit cycle. It allows for regular global observation and time series analysis. It turns around the world between 12 days. Key application is for ground information tracking, ice sheet movement monitoring, vegetation and forest dynamics, soil moisture variation, sea ice classification, surface water resource mapping. So it is used for all these aspects. It is also used for ship and shoreline detection, disaster response and storm analysis. So both physical geography, disaster management, resource mapping everywhere. The mission phases, first is the launch phase, that is injection into orbit by GSLV F-16. Second is deployment phase, that is unfolding of the 12-meter antenna via 9-meter deployable boom. Next is commissioning phase, which starts for 90 days. Initial spacecraft checks, payload and radar calibration. Next is science phase, that is for 5 years. Active radar scanning, orbit maintenance with minimal observation disruption. Okay, that is about NISA. And next there is an article that is Veer Parivar Sahayata Yojana. Veer Parivar Sahayata Yojana, it is the NALSA or National Legal Service Authority has launched Veer Parivar Sahayata Yojana to strengthen legal aid for defense personnel, ex-servicemen and their families. Okay, important. Veer Parivar Sahayata. So Veer is a defense personnel and their families. About the scheme, launched by NALSA, target beneficiaries, defense personnel, serving and retired as well as their families. Objective is provide accessible and efficient legal services to armed forces families, especially in civil, service related and welfare issues. Next is legal clinics set up at Zilla, Rajya and Kendra Sainik Brands. Integration, Sainik boards act as a legal aid hubs and in paralegal volunteers, that is defense family members encouraged to be trained as volunteers for local and legal empowerment. So this is about Veer Parivar Sahayata Yojana. And the types of legal assistance provided here is respect to land and property disputes, like matrimonial and family issues, service entitlements such as promotions, pensions and benefits, utility or civil grievances such as billing and documentation, and finally remote conflict zone assistance. All these things or all these type of legal assistance is provided to Veer Parivar Sahatya. Now about NALSA. NALSA is established under Legal Services Authority Act of 1987, which came into force in 1995, which makes NALSA a statutory body. Mandate, it provides free, competent legal services to the underprivileged. Next, Patron-in-Chief, that is the Chief Justice of India, is the Patron-in-Chief. Next, Executive Chairman is the senior most Supreme Court judge nominated by CJI. And the core functions, that is providing legal literacy, Lok Adalats, legal aid in civil and criminal matters, outreach to marginalization groups. All these works are done by National Legal Service Authority. And free legal aid in India. What is the status of free legal aid in India? It is both constitutional and it has got both constitutional and legal backing. Under Article 21, right to life includes access to justice, and under Article 13A, that is Directive Principles of State Policy, there is a directive for the state for equal justice and free legal aid, which was added by 42nd Amendment Act. Legal Service Authority Act of 1987, which provides 4-tier legal service structures: national, state, district and taluka. Section 341A, Bharatiya Nagarika Suraksha Sanhita 2023, it mandates legal aid to indigent accused persons. Next is eligibility for free legal aid. Who are eligible? For women and children, all women and children are eligible for free legal aid. SC/ST, they are automatically eligible. Persons with disability as per the government notification. Industrial workmen recognized under the relevant labor laws. Victims of disaster violence includes man-made or both natural disasters. Persons in custody, that is jail, protective homes or juvenile homes, they are also included. And economically weaker section depends on the annual income. That is, if it is below 1 lakh, they are considered general cases. If it is below 5 lakh, for Supreme Court cases. So this is about NALSA and the qualification for free legal aid. Okay, so these are the articles which I wanted to discuss for the day. We discussed all the important articles from today, the Hindu newspaper. And if you have any doubts or if you want some topics to be discussed from the UPSC mains perspective, you can write down in the comment box. And also, we are bringing a dedicated UPSC mains program where we will be discussing mains relevant topics such as which will be very relevant for UPSC mains. We will be discussing from GS 1, 2, 3, 4 perspective. What we will be covering here is important data which you can use in your answers, important committees which you can use in our answer, and then along with this we'll also be including important case studies and important welfare schemes and important judgments, as well as most probable mains questions. Everything will be covered in the coming topic of the day videos. We'll be discussing from the mains perspective. So you can follow the channel and subscribe to it, and you will get a notification on whenever the video is uploaded. And if you have any other recommendation or any topics which you want to be discussed in the classes, do write in the comment box. We'll bring a dedicated video for that aspect as well. So with this, I will end the video. Jai Hind.